The Korean Peninsula is one of the most dangerous places in the world, a place where decades of fragile peace can shatter in an instant. And in the early hours of that tense night, the silence was broken by fire streaking across the sky. North Korea had fired missiles at South Korea, igniting a chain of events that shook the region and left the world staring at the brink of something far worse. It began suddenly and without warning. Along the western coastline of North Korea, hidden among forested hills and camouflaged bunkers, mobile launchers crept into position. Crews worked quickly, moving under the cover of night, erecting the massive transport erector launchers and preparing their deadly cargo. These were not drills or exercises staged for propaganda. They were real missiles, fully fueled and fully armed. Orders from Pyongyang had come directly from the highest levels, and in that authoritarian state, those orders were not to be questioned. At precisely the designated hour, the stillness of the Korean night was shattered. Engines roared, flames erupted, and missiles tore skyward in blinding plumes of fire. They rose into the dark sky, arching high above the earth before tilting southward, their trajectories unmistakable. Pyongyang's defiance had become deadly action. Within seconds, South Korea's extensive radar network picked up the launches. In underground bunkers south of Seoul, operators stared at their screens as alarms screamed through the command centers. Voices overlapped, calling out speed, altitude, and direction. The display showed not one or two missiles, but several, fired in rapid succession, a salvo designed to overwhelm defenses. The announcement came quickly: hostile missiles inbound. In Seoul, the capital of South Korea, air raid sirens blared across the sprawling city. Millions of civilians who had heard these sirens in countless drills now realized this was no practice. Families rushed to basements and subway stations, clutching children, dragging elderly relatives. Traffic snarled as cars were abandoned on streets. Soldiers mobilized across the city, their uniforms barely on, as they sprinted toward positions. The entire metropolis of nearly 10 million people was on edge, staring at the night sky in fear of what might come. In the command centers, South Korean officers moved with drilled precision. Batteries of Patriot missile interceptors powered on. The Terminal High Altitude Area Defense System, THAAD, went live, its radars tracking the arcs of the North Korean missiles as they closed the distance. Across air bases, Republic of Korea Air Force fighter jets scrambled into the air, engines howling as F-15Ks and KF-16s soared upward to secure the skies. American forces stationed in the south joined instantly. US F-35 stealth fighters roared from bases, while US Navy ships off the peninsula tightened their formations, Aegis radar systems locking onto every hostile object. The entire alliance structure in Northeast Asia had come alive. Back in Pyongyang, officials gathered around their own command centers, smiling as they watched the launches on their screens. State television cameras rolled, capturing the dramatic images of rockets leaving their launchers, footage that would soon be broadcast to the North Korean people as proof of strength. They believed they had shocked the South, that their missiles would strike fear and force concessions. But outside their borders, the world was already preparing to respond. The first intercept came high over the Yellow Sea. A Patriot missile streaked skyward, colliding with a North Korean warhead in a blinding flash. The impact lit up the night sky, raining fragments harmlessly into the water below. Cheers erupted in the South Korean command center, but the celebration was brief. More missiles were still inbound. THAAD batteries fired next, their interceptors climbing into the upper atmosphere. Each successful strike sent shockwaves through the night, explosions like stars erupting above the peninsula. But not all were intercepted. One missile broke through, its trajectory angling toward a South Korean airbase. Alarms screamed. Pilots raced to their jets, even as the ground shook with the impact. A thunderous explosion tore through the outskirts of the base, destroying fuel tanks and damaging several hangars. Flames rose into the night sky as emergency crews rushed forward, battling fire while commanders assessed casualties. The strike was limited, but the message was clear: North Korea could reach deep into the south. In Washington, D.C., The news reached the White House within minutes. The President of the United States was briefed in the Situation Room, military advisors standing over maps of the Korean Peninsula, live feeds showing radar arcs, intercept launches, and burning airfields. The chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff outlined contingency options, while US Indo-Pacific Command relayed updates from Hawaii. American bombers in Guam were placed on alert, and aircraft carriers in the Pacific shifted their courses toward the peninsula. In Tokyo, Japanese leaders watched with equal concern. Their missile defense systems were also placed on full readiness, aware that some North Korean missiles could easily fly over their territory. Air raid sirens blared across parts of northern Japan as precautionary measures were taken. The entire region had been thrown into a moment of chaos that could spiral further. Beijing, too, was watching. China, North Korea's only major ally, was alarmed. The Chinese leadership feared escalation, knowing that a misstep could draw American and South Korean retaliation that might destabilize the entire region. Diplomats moved quickly to call for restraint, even as Chinese military forces increased surveillance along their border. As the night dragged on, the missile launches slowed, then stopped. Pyongyang had made its point. They had fired their salvo and proven they could reach across the border, but the cost was already becoming clear. South Korea announced that most of the missiles had been intercepted, limiting damage. Images of the burning airbase spread quickly, but so too did footage of successful intercepts. Bright fireballs over the sea, proving the resilience of South Korea's defenses. By morning, the entire world was talking. In Seoul, officials condemned the attack as a reckless provocation. They vowed retaliation, though carefully calibrated to avoid triggering an all-out war. The United States stood firmly beside them, pledging that any further aggression would be met with overwhelming force. Japan declared the launches unacceptable. NATO leaders voiced solidarity. The United Nations Security Council called an emergency session, though everyone knew North Korea had ignored such condemnations countless times before. The North Korean regime may have thought this strike would strengthen their bargaining position, but it had done the opposite. It united the South Korean people, hardened American resolve, and rattled China with the possibility of uncontrolled escalation. The entire region now braced for what might come next. Would South Korea retaliate militarily? Would the United States strike missile launches in the north? Or would diplomacy once again be forced to walk a tightrope between war and fragile peace? The night North Korea fired missiles at South Korea will be remembered not just for the fire streaking across the sky, but for the fear it inspired, the chaos it created, and the message it delivered. Peace on the peninsula remains an illusion that can vanish in an instant. The world saw how close humanity came to a wider war, and how fragile stability remains in one of the most dangerous corners of the earth. If you stand with those who defend freedom on the Korean Peninsula, share this video, hit like, and subscribe for more gripping accounts of modern military confrontations. And tell us in the comments, do you think this was merely a provocation to get attention, or a rehearsal for something much bigger to come?